It is the year Universal Century 0123. 30 years have passed since the events of Char's counterattack, and Zeon no longer exists. The Earth Federation began building new colonies for people to live in, and it would appear that mankind can finally live in peace. That is, until a new faction, Crossbone Vanguard, attacks one of the colonies and plans to take total control. During the horrific attack, a young teenager named Seabook Arno is caught in the struggle along with his friend and love interest, Cecily Fairchild, as well as his other friends on board the colony. They soon join up with the Earth Federation, thus they are thrown into the conflict as Seabook takes control of a new prototype Gundam designed by his mother, the Gundam F91. Many secrets will be unveiled as Seabook and his friends now try to end the tyranny of the Crossbone Vanguard. Gundam F91 was originally planned as a full-fledged Gundam series made by Tomino, though after a couple of episodes were scripted, the people at Sunrise supposedly decided that they didn't like it and wanted it to be turned into a movie instead, and so Tomino did just that, cropping F91's planned 50 episodes into a 2-hour-long movie. Sadly though, the story of F91 suffers severely because it was all crammed down into a movie format. It just doesn't work because there's too much to tell in very little time. The movie moves at a neck-breaking speed, giving us very little time to get used to any of the characters or story elements. It's a shame because I thought the story was rather entertaining and I actually liked the cast here. They just had very little time to shine. Seabook is of course your typical angsty teenager that is unwillingly thrown into the conflict like most other Gundam protagonists. So he does become an interesting character later on. Had the whole story been longer, I would have been more connected to his character. Same goes for Cecily. She's interesting because of her true identity, but again, there wasn't enough time to feel any sort of connection to her. The Crossbone Vanguard does seem to be an intimidating faction, but they just come off as just a clone of Zeon, having practically the same kind of goals as the former Principality. It isn't all just copy and pasted though, for I thought characters like Iron Mask were really cool. Speaking of Iron Mask, I get a lot of Star Wars vibes when it comes to this movie. Iron Mask looks like and sounds like a Darth Vader type of character, the Crossbone Vanguard are a reflection of the Galactic Empire, and Seabook and his friends are more or less Luke and the Rebels. Hell, there are even more Star Wars nods in the music of the movie, which I'll get into later. One major gripe I just can't let go of in this movie is the amount of ridiculous deaths. Again, it isn't as bad as certain other anime made by Tomino, but I get the feeling he was rather upset when making this movie. The colony battle alone has a lot of civilians dying, dead kids in the street. Hell, one woman was killed by getting hit by a frickin' ammo clip of a mobile suit's gun. But probably the biggest, most confusing, most random death in all of Gundam, not just F91, but all of Gundam, was when one guy in a hallway just drops dead for no reason whatsoever. No gun bullets, no struggle, he just drops like a fly. What the flying fuck? That makes no sense. Bottom line, despite having an entertaining story, the movie moves too fast, and thus we couldn't really appreciate the story or the characters, since there just wasn't enough time to develop them. The visuals are pretty much on par with Char's counterattack, and thus most of what I said in my review of Char's counterattack can be applied here. Some of the suits from Char's counterattack are still around, and I really like the new mobile suits. The Crossbone Vanguard has some really cool mobile suit designs, and the F91 is one of my top 10 favorite Gundams. Some of the things it can do are pretty badass. The music is pretty good. As I said earlier, I feel a certain Star Wars vibe from it. One musical score in the movie sounds familiar to the Imperial March from Star Wars. The music, however, truly shines because of one song, the ending theme, Eternal Wind, by Hiroko Moriguchi. It is such a phenomenal song, and to me, it is on par with Do You Remember Love by Mari Iijima. The Japanese version is good. but I don't really know any of the seiyus aside from Koji Tsuchitani and Takashi Kusao. On the other hand, the English dub has a lot of well-known voice actors who did a good job. Steve Staley voices Seabook, and he actually voiced a few protagonists in Gundam, as he also voiced Shiro Amada from OFM's team, and recently, Banagher Lynx from Gundam Unicorn. Setsui is voiced by the talented Michelle Ruff, who would go on to voice characters like Yoko from Gurren Lagann, Rukia from Bleach, Fujiko from Lupin III, Jill from Resident Evil, and so on and so forth. While F91 may have looked good on paper, the execution was very poor. I can't really blame Tomino for the way the movie turned out. He really wanted to make F91 into an anime series, but the higher-ups said no. However, I would have been fine with a trilogy of movies or an OVA format. It would have helped expand the story and gave it the time it needed. Fortunately, Tomino did actually follow up on the story of F91 with a manga series called Crossbone Gundam. I took a look at it and it was pretty interesting. I mean, come on, the Gundams look like badass pirates. Though by itself, F91 was really disappointing compared to Char's counterattack. Watch if you want, but really, the movie wasn't really good. F91 would be the turning point of Tomino's career during the 90s and would ultimately lead to his downfall later on in the middle of the decade. It could have been something far better, but it is what it is. Final score, 4.5 out of 10.